The old house felt heavier now that her mother was gone. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast by the afternoon sun, seemed to whisper tales of a past Sarah now navigated alone. For months, a suffocating silence had filled the rooms that once echoed with her mother's gentle laughter and the comforting rustle of turning pages. Sarah, a woman in her late 40s, found herself adrift in a sea of grief, clutching at the flotsam of memory, trying to make sense of the sudden emptiness. Her life, once clearly charted, now stretched before her as an uncharted ocean, vast and terrifying. She'd spent weeks sorting through her mother's belongings, each item a poignant reminder, each box a Pandora's chest of emotions she wasn't ready to confront. The weight of decisions, what to keep, what to let go, pressed down on her, an unyielding burden. She sought solace, a sign, any flicker of guidance, but found only the stark reality of her solitude. Yet, as the nights grew longer and the silence deepened, a new, unsettling presence began to stir within her sleep. It began subtly, a faint whisper at the edge of her awareness, like a half-remembered tune. Then, the images started to coalesce, fragments of a vivid, persistent dream that invaded her sleep almost every night. It wasn't a nightmare, nor was it entirely peaceful. There was a sense of urgency, an insistent pull she couldn't ignore. In the dream, she was always in a dimly lit room, familiar yet distorted, like her own living room seen through a hazy lens. A deep, resonant voice, not quite male, not quite female, yet undeniably powerful, would echo, "When you see the key in your hands, open." Each night, the words became clearer, the voice more distinct, carrying an authority that transcended the dream state. She'd wake with a start, the phrase reverberating in her mind, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She'd dismiss it as the residue of grief, the subconscious trying to process the overwhelming changes in her life, attributing it to the stress of her mother's passing. After all, wasn't it natural for the mind to conjure such things when grappling with loss? She told herself it was just her imagination, a fleeting byproduct of emotional strain. Yet the dreams persisted, growing in intensity. The dream evolved. Now she didn't just hear the words. She saw a key. It wasn't a grand, ornate key, but a simple, tarnished brass one, resting in the palm of an unseen hand. The light in the dream room would shift, illuminating the key with an almost otherworldly glow. And then, the voice again, softer, but more insistent. "When you see the key in your hands, open." The implication was clear, yet the meaning remained elusive. What key? What was she supposed to open? Sarah would awaken with a profound sense of perplexity, the image of the brass key seared into her memory. She'd spend her days in a fog, the dream playing on a loop in her subconscious, trying to decipher its cryptic message. She found herself subconsciously scanning her mother's belongings for anything resembling that key, but dismissed it each time. It was just a dream, she reasoned, a phantom born of exhaustion and sorrow. The house, however, seemed to grow more oppressive, its silence broken only by the whispers of her own anxious thoughts. The dreams became her nightly ritual, an unavoidable journey into a surreal landscape where the brass key and the echoing command were the only constants. Sarah's sleep, once a sanctuary from her waking grief, was now a battleground of mysterious directives. She started to feel a growing unease, a prickling sensation that this was more than just her subconscious processing sorrow. The sheer persistence, the vivid detail, the increasing clarity of the voice, it all pointed to something beyond the ordinary. She tried to rationalize it, to find logical explanations for the repetitive visions. Perhaps she had seen a similar key somewhere, tucked away in an old drawer, and her mind was simply recalling it in a distorted fashion. Yet deep down, a fragile seed of wonder began to sprout. This wasn't merely a fleeting image. It felt imbued with significance, with a purpose that eluded her grasp. Each morning, she felt a strange mix of fatigue and an almost desperate urge to understand, to pierce through the veil of mystery. One morning, after a particularly vivid dream where the key seemed to almost hum with energy, Sarah found herself recounting the experience to her closest friend, Emily. Emily, practical and grounded, listened patiently, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. "It sounds like your mind is trying to tell you something, Sarah," Emily offered gently. "Or maybe it's just processing your grief in a symbolic way. You know how vivid dreams can get during stressful times." Sarah nodded, acknowledging the common sense in Emily's words, yet a flicker of doubt remained. "But what if it's more?" Sarah mused, her voice barely a whisper. "What if it's a sign?" Emily squeezed her hand. "A sign for what, though? To open what? Have you found anything, any actual key that matches your dream?" Sarah shook her head, feeling a renewed wave of frustration. The house was meticulously organized thanks to her mother's fastidiousness. If there was a key, it wasn't immediately apparent, and the dream offered no further clues beyond the enigmatic command. The conversation, while supportive, left Sarah feeling no closer to an answer, only more aware of the growing chasm between her waking reality and her nightly visions. The quest for meaning began to consume Sarah. She started looking at her mother's things with new eyes, scrutinizing every object, every nook and cranny, as if the brass key might suddenly materialize from the mundane. She combed through old jewelry boxes, dusty antique chests, even the forgotten pockets of coats long since retired. Each search yielded nothing but memories, some bittersweet, some comforting, but no key, no revelation. The disappointment was a heavy cloak wrapping around her shoulders. She felt a growing sense of foolishness, chasing after a phantom from a dream, neglecting the more tangible tasks of settling her mother's estate. Yet, the dream persisted, unyielding in its message. "When you see the key in your hands, open." The voice, now familiar, felt less like an external entity and more like an internal whisper, urging her onward, despite the futility of her efforts. The line between imagination and reality blurred with each passing day, leaving Sarah feeling increasingly isolated in her peculiar pursuit. Her mother, Eleanor, had been a woman of quiet faith, her Bible a constant companion on her bedside table. Sarah had always respected her mother's spiritual devotion, though she herself had drifted from organized religion years ago. Now, in the aftermath of loss, Sarah found herself drawn to her mother's well-worn Bible, its pages thin from countless readings. She picked it up sometimes, just to hold it, feeling a faint echo of her mother's presence. There was a comfort in the familiar scent of aged paper and leather. She often wondered what passages her mother had cherished most, what words had brought her solace during difficult times. Yet, despite her growing fascination, Sarah never truly delved into its contents, not in a way that sought answers for herself. She respected it as her mother's sacred text, not her own. The dream, meanwhile, continued its nightly pilgrimage, the key gleaming, the voice unwavering, deepening the mystery surrounding her path. The emotional toll of this relentless search began to weigh heavily on Sarah. Her sleep was disturbed, her days filled with an anxious anticipation that was never met. She grew withdrawn, consumed by her private quest. Friends noticed her preoccupation, her faraway gaze, but Sarah struggled to articulate the strange burden she carried. How could she explain chasing a dream, a whispered command, when even she questioned her own sanity? She felt a profound loneliness in this journey, a sense of being on the precipice of something significant, yet utterly alone in deciphering its meaning. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets, each room holding potential clues that remained stubbornly hidden. The key, in her dreams, now seemed to pulse with a faint light, almost beckoning her, promising an answer if only she could understand its true nature. One evening, exhausted from another fruitless search through her mother's things, Sarah collapsed onto the old armchair in the living room. Her gaze fell upon her mother's Bible, still resting on the bedside table. A sudden, irrational impulse seized her. What if the key wasn't a physical object at all? What if it was something more metaphorical, something hidden within words, within faith? The thought was fleeting, almost dismissive, yet it lodged itself in her mind. Her mother had found such profound solace in those pages. Could there be a connection? Could the dream be pointing not to a literal key, but to a symbolic one? The idea felt both absurd and strangely compelling. She pictured the tarnished brass key in her dream, and then her eyes drifted back to the worn leather cover of the Bible. A small, tentative spark of an idea began to ignite in the depths of her weary mind. A new angle she hadn't considered before. That night, the dream was different. The room was no longer dimly lit. It was bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. The key, still in the unseen hand, shimmered with an almost incandescent light. But this time, the voice, though still resonant, felt closer, more intimate, as if speaking directly to her soul. The key is within your grasp, Sarah. Look where faith resides. Open. The command was punctuated by a gentle, almost musical hum. Sarah woke with a gasp, tears welling in her eyes. It was no longer a vague whisper. It was a personal address. Sarah, her name. The dream had crossed a new threshold, moving from cryptic instruction to direct communication. The phrase, "Look where faith resides," echoed in her mind, clear and unmistakable. There was only one place in her mother's home that truly embodied where faith resides, and that was the Bible. A shiver ran down her spine, a blend of fear and profound hope. This was no longer merely a dream. It was a revelation, urging her toward a specific path. With trembling hands, Sarah walked into her mother's bedroom. The morning light, usually so indifferent, now seemed to highlight the Bible on the nightstand. She reached for it, her fingers brushing against the familiar texture of the aged leather. Her heart hammered in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the house. This felt like a sacred act, a crossing of a threshold she had long avoided. She lifted the Bible, its weight comforting, familiar, and then she saw it. Tucked neatly beneath the sacred text, a single, cream-colored envelope. It wasn't hidden in a secret compartment or taped to a hidden shelf. It was simply there, waiting patiently, placed with deliberate intention. It looked as if it had been waiting for her specific moment of understanding, for the dream to guide her gaze to this precise spot. The simple envelope seemed to hum with the same silent energy as the key in her dream, drawing her in with an undeniable pull. The envelope was old, the paper slightly brittle at the edges, but perfectly preserved. It had no address, no stamp, just Sarah's name, written in her mother's elegant flowing script. A single tear traced a path down Sarah's cheek as she stared at the familiar handwriting. A sudden wave of both profound sadness and exhilarating anticipation washing over her. Her mother had known. She had left this message, this key, specifically for her. The thought brought both comfort and a fresh pang of grief. Why now? Why this way? Why couldn't her mother have simply told her? But then, the dream returned to her mind. When you see the key in your hands, open. This wasn't just a letter. It was the culmination of a divine message, a carefully orchestrated path that had led her to this moment. The dream wasn't just a metaphor for grief. It was a map, a spiritual directive. With a deep breath, she realized this was it, the moment she had been unknowingly preparing for. Her fingers trembled as she slid a nail under the flap of the envelope. It wasn't sealed tightly, as if it were meant to be opened without struggle, without further delay. The subtle crinkle of the paper as it opened was the loudest sound in the quiet house. Inside, folded neatly, was a single sheet of paper, also in her mother's hand. There was no specific date, but the ink looked aged, perhaps written months or even years ago. Sarah unfolded it slowly, her eyes scanning the familiar loops and curves of her mother's script. Each word felt imbued with Eleanor's very essence, a whisper from beyond the veil. The gravity of the moment pressed down on her, every nerve ending tingling with a mixture of fear and profound reverence. This was not just a letter. It was a final conversation, a piece of her mother she had thought was lost forever. What secrets, what truths did these words hold? The answer lay before her, waiting to be revealed. The letter began not with a greeting, but with a confession, stark and unexpected. "My dearest Sarah," it read, "if you are reading this, it means you have found the key. I have prayed that you would, that God would guide you to this truth when the time was right." Sarah's breath hitched. A truth? What truth? Her mind raced, sifting through memories. The words on the aged parchment were a labyrinth. They spoke of land, a trust, and a name Ilara faintly recognized from hushed family whispers. a great aunt who had vanished from their collective memory decades ago, shrouded in a vague tale of illness. The letter wasn't a direct instruction, but a cryptic plea, a fragmented narrative outlining a deep injustice that had befallen their ancestors, specifically involving a significant portion of their ancestral lands and an inheritance that had seemingly evaporated into thin air. It wasn't about hidden treasure in the conventional sense, but a legacy deliberately obscured, a truth buried beneath layers of time and convenience. Ilara felt a profound sense of disorientation. The clarity of the dream now clashed with the bewildering complexity of the letter's contents. She understood that she held a key, but what exactly it unlocked, and to what purpose, remained an enigma that pulsed with a quiet, insistent urgency. The silence of the house amplified the mystery, making the rustling of the paper in her hands sound like a secret whispered through generations. The dream's vivid command, "When you see the key in your hands, open," echoed in Ilara's mind, a stark contrast to the historical maze presented by the letter. It wasn't a physical key, she now understood, but a key to a suppressed history, a truth waiting to be unveiled. The letter alluded to a specific property, an old, dilapidated estate on the outskirts of their town that had belonged to their family for generations, but had been largely ignored, deemed a financial burden rather than a historical treasure. It was a place she hadn't visited in years, a relic of a past that seemed stubbornly irrelevant to her modern life. Now, it felt like the epicenter of a dormant narrative, stirring to life. The weight of this secret, this divinely delivered mission, began to press down on her. How could she, a quiet individual, unravel decades of deceit and recover what was lost, without disrupting the fragile peace of her own family? The conflict brewed within her, a silent battle between her ordinary existence and the extraordinary path laid before her. Driven by an unshakable sense of purpose, Ilara began her solitary research, navigating dusty archives and local historical societies. The names and dates mentioned in the letter became her compass, guiding her through forgotten land deeds, census records, and old newspaper clippings. She discovered inconsistencies, faint whispers of legal disputes, and odd transfers of property that didn't quite align with official narratives. The deeper she delved, the more evident it became that a deliberate effort had been made to erase certain details, to smooth over rough edges of the past. Her great-aunt's disappearance, once a vague family sorrow, now seemed connected to a larger, more sinister plot. The truth was not just veiled, it was actively hidden, guarded by the passage of time and the convenience of forgetfulness. Ilara felt a deep isolation, the burden of this revelation heavy on her shoulders, yet simultaneously, a fierce resolve solidified within her. She was now part of a story far older than herself, and the divine whisper of her dream propelled her forward. Ilara reached a crossroads, the magnitude of the task ahead threatening to overwhelm her. The idea of confronting such a deeply entrenched injustice, potentially challenging powerful local figures, felt terrifying. What if she was wrong? What if the dream was just a figment of her imagination, the letter merely an old, forgotten tale? Doubts began to creep in, whispering insidious questions about her capabilities and the true source of this revelation. The path of least resistance, to simply let the past remain buried, seemed incredibly tempting. Yet beneath the fear, an unyielding core of conviction remained. The vividness of her dream, the inexplicable presence of the letter beneath her Bible, these were not easily dismissed. They were anchors, reminding her that this journey wasn't of her own making, but a calling. It is in these profound moments of divine prompting that we often find our true calling, a purpose far greater than ourselves. If this story resonates with your own journey of faith and discovery, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that illuminate the unseen hand of providence in our lives. Your support helps us share these powerful testimonies with a wider audience. Ignoring her lingering apprehension, Ilara drove to the old family estate, a place she hadn't stepped foot in since childhood. It was a grand but decaying structure, its once proud facade now crumbling, its windows like vacant eyes staring out over overgrown gardens. The air inside was thick with dust, and the scent of forgotten memories. Each creaking floorboard, each ray of sunlight piercing the gloom, seemed to whisper tales of a bygone era. The letter hadn't given explicit instructions about the estate, but a powerful intuition, an almost magnetic pull, drew her to its neglected corners. As she walked through the silent rooms, she felt the presence of those who had lived there, their hopes and sorrows still clinging to the walls. It was as if the house itself was waiting, holding its breath, anticipating the moment its long-kept secrets would finally be unearthed. Her intuition led her to the dusty attic, a vast space cluttered with forgotten furniture, trunks, and the detritus of generations. Cobwebs draped like ghostly curtains, and the air was heavy with the musty smell of age. In a dimly lit corner, tucked away beneath a pile of old canvases, she saw it, a heavy wooden chest, bound with dark iron straps and secured by an intricate, old-fashioned lock. It wasn't ostentatious, but its craftsmanship spoke of a time when objects were made to endure. This was it. This was the key from her dream, made tangible. It was not a key in her hands to open a door, but a key in the sense of a pivotal object, a container of truth. The sight of it sent a shiver down her spine, a blend of trepidation and profound excitement. The dream had been literal in its symbolism, yet metaphorical in its application. Now the question remained: how to open it? The ornate lock on the chest was not designed for a conventional key. Ilara tried gently, carefully, but it held firm. Frustration began to set in. How could she have come this far only to be stopped by an old lock? Then, a flash of insight, almost a whisper in her mind: the Bible. The letter hadn't just been under the Bible, it had been connected to it. She rushed back home, retrieved the Bible, and found the page where the letter had lain. There, subtly underlined in faint faded ink, was a single verse from Proverbs. It spoke of wisdom, diligence, and the unlocking of understanding. As she reread the verse, a specific word, seemingly innocuous, jumped out at her. It wasn't a literal key, but a phonetic clue, a word that sounded remarkably similar to a component of the chest's intricate locking mechanism. A surge of surprise, then elation, coursed through her. The divine message wasn't just a directive, it was an interactive puzzle guiding her step by step. Armed with this newfound insight, Ilara returned to the attic. She examined the chest's lock more closely. Indeed, nestled within the elaborate metalwork was a small, almost invisible dial, designed to be turned to a specific sequence, triggered by a sound or word. Remembering the word from the biblical verse, she carefully, reverently, turned the dial to correspond with the phonetic clue. There was a faint click, then another, and finally a deep, resonant thunk as the ancient lock disengaged. The old wood groaned in protest as she slowly lifted the heavy lid. Inside, it wasn't glittering jewels or stacks of gold, but a treasure of a different kind, a collection of leather-bound journals, meticulously handwritten, and a bundle of legal documents tied with a brittle silk ribbon. It was a time capsule of truth, far more valuable than any material wealth, holding the very essence of the family's lost narrative. Ilara carefully removed the contents of the chest. The journals belonged to her great-grandmother, a woman whose existence was barely a footnote in family lore. The faded ink on the brittle pages began to tell a story of quiet strength, fierce determination, and profound betrayal. They detailed how a vast tract of the family's land, rich in a valuable mineral deposit, had been systematically and unjustly wrested from them by powerful local figures through manipulative legal maneuvers. The journals chronicled her great-grandmother's meticulous efforts to document the fraud, her tireless collection of evidence, and her unwavering faith that one day the truth would emerge. It was a narrative of hidden sorrow, but also of an unyielding spirit that refused to let an injustice remain buried forever. The key from Ilara's dream had unlocked not just a chest, but a forgotten legacy of her own lineage. Ilara spent days, then weeks, immersed in the faded script of her great-grandmother's journals and the labyrinthine language of the accompanying legal documents. The story unfolded with agonizing clarity. She learned of forced sales, forged signatures, and systemic intimidation that had stripped her family of their rightful inheritance, leaving them with only a fraction of their ancestral wealth. The injustice was not a simple mistake, but a calculated act of greed and power. Yet, amidst the pain and loss, her great-grandmother's words radiated an astonishing resilience. She had painstakingly recorded every detail, every name, every date, driven by an unwavering belief that truth, however long suppressed, would eventually come to light. The key was not just a symbol of unlocking a past event. It was unlocking a profound understanding of her family's enduring spirit and the quiet strength of faith that had persevered through generations of silent suffering. Among the journals and faded correspondence, Ilara discovered the ultimate piece of the puzzle, a meticulously drafted last will and testament dated shortly before her great-grandmother's passing. This will, never officially probated, explicitly detailed the rightful ownership of the contested land, the precise terms of a trust fund meant for its restoration, and a clear vision for how the recovered assets were to benefit future generations, focusing on education and community upliftment. It was not just a will, it was a blueprint for restitution, a testament to her great-grandmother's foresight and unwavering hope. This document, combined with the detailed accounts in the journals and the old land deeds, created an irrefutable case. The revelation brought a profound sense of awe and immense responsibility. Ilara was now holding the power to right a historical wrong, to fulfill a decades-old promise. Sharing her findings with her family was far more challenging than Ilara had anticipated. She gathered them, clutching the fragile documents, her voice trembling slightly as she recounted the story of the dream, the letter, and the incredible discovery in the attic. The initial reactions were a chaotic mix: confusion, disbelief, and outright skepticism. Her uncle, practical and cautious, feared the legal complexities, the costs, and the potential for public ridicule. Her cousins dismissed it as a fanciful tale, suggesting old documents were unreliable. Some family members openly preferred to let the past remain undisturbed, clinging to the fragile piece of their current lives, wary of stirring up dormant grudges or challenging powerful figures in the community. Ilara found herself standing alone, caught between the undeniable truth she held in her hands and the comfortable ignorance her family had lived with for so long. Despite the initial resistance, Ilara felt a profound moral imperative to proceed. The dream hadn't just revealed a secret, it had ignited a fire of conviction within her. This wasn't just about reclaiming land or money. It was about honoring the resilience of her great-grandmother, correcting a historical injustice, and restoring integrity to their family's narrative. She patiently and calmly presented the irrefutable evidence, explaining the painstaking detail in the journals, the legal strength of the rediscovered will, and the discrepancies in the old land records. She appealed not just to their sense of justice, but to their shared history, their lineage, and the quiet dignity of an ancestor whose story deserved to be told and acknowledged. Her resolve was unwavering, bolstered by the sense of divine purpose that had set her on this path. Slowly, hesitantly, a few family members began to come around. Her elderly Aunt Clara, who harbored faint, almost subconscious memories of her own mother's quiet sadness and whispers of something lost, was the first to recognize the truth in Ilara's words. The documents, especially the great-grandmother's elegant handwriting, resonated deeply with her. Then a younger cousin, a history enthusiast, became captivated by the narrative, seeing the injustice not as a burden, but as a compelling historical case demanding rectification. Their support, though initially cautious, began to snowball, providing Ilara with much-needed allies. The battle to reclaim their heritage shifted from a solitary quest to a collective family endeavor, uniting them in a shared purpose that transcended their earlier fears and divisions. The legal battle that ensued was, as her great-grandmother's journals had foretold, long and grueling. The powerful entities who had benefited from the original land grab were not easily dislodged. They employed every legal tactic imaginable, delaying proceedings, questioning the authenticity of the documents, and even attempting to intimidate Ilara and her family. There were moments of profound despair, nights filled with worry and doubt. The legal fees mounted, and the strain began to tell on everyone involved. Ilara sometimes wondered if the dream had been a cruel illusion, if the key had simply opened a Pandora's box of trouble rather than delivering a blessing. The weight of responsibility felt crushing, threatening to extinguish the spark of faith that had initially guided her. During one particularly challenging and disheartening legal hearing, as the opposing counsel aggressively questioned the validity of their ancient documents, Ilara felt a wave of overwhelming hopelessness. Her voice faltered, her resolve wavered. Then, a subtle, almost imperceptible detail from her initial dream surfaced in her memory. Not the words, but the profound sense of calm, the quiet, unwavering presence that had enveloped her. It was a feeling of being held, guided, even in the midst of chaos. This small internal revelation wasn't a grand vision, but a gentle reminder of the divine hand that had set her on this path. It wasn't about her own strength, but about the strength that flowed through her. Renewed, she found her voice, articulating her family's case with a calm conviction that surprised even herself, cutting through the opposition's bluster. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the tide began to turn. The meticulous records kept by her great-grandmother, dismissed by the opposition as amateur scribblings, proved to be an undeniable anchor of truth. Her detailed surveys, the exact dates of the fraudulent transactions, and even the names of witnesses long deceased stood as irrefutable proof. The legal team, initially cautious, grew increasingly confident in their position as the truth, preserved with such faith and diligence, began to dismantle years of obfuscation and legal maneuvering. The moral weight of the case, coupled with the sheer volume of meticulously documented evidence, became undeniable. Justice, though slow, was inching closer, revealing itself through the cracks of a long-buried past. After nearly 5 arduous years, a settlement was finally reached. It wasn't a complete victory in the Hollywood sense. They didn't reclaim every single acre or every lost penny from the distant past. However, it was a profound and significant triumph. A substantial portion of the original ancestral land, crucial for its ecological value, was returned to the family, along with a compensatory fund that acknowledged the historical injustice. The resolution was deeply honest, reflecting the compromises inherent in such complex legal battles, yet it brought an overwhelming sense of closure, vindication, and healing to the family. It was not just a legal outcome. It was a spiritual affirmation, a tangible manifestation of a wrong finally being made right generations after it occurred. True to her great-grandmother's vision, the family used the recovered resources to establish a community foundation. It was named in honor of their matriarch, focusing on education, sustainable agriculture, and environmental conservation, a direct reflection of her deep respect for the land and her unwavering belief in the power of knowledge. Ilara witnessed her family, once fragmented by forgotten history and quiet resentment, unite in a shared, meaningful purpose. Old wounds began to heal, replaced by a collective pride and a renewed sense of identity. The land, once a symbol of loss, became a beacon of hope and community growth, a living testament to the power of truth revealed and a legacy reclaimed. Ilara often revisited the old estate, now slowly being restored, its gardens tended with loving care, its rooms no longer echoing with silence but humming with the promise of new life. The crumbling facades were mended, the dusty windows cleaned, allowing light to flood into spaces once shrouded in gloom. She would walk through the grounds, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had begun. The raw emotion that surged through me wasn't just relief, it was a profound sense of gratitude, an overwhelming peace that settled deep within my soul. The letter, carefully placed beneath the worn pages of the Bible, wasn't just ink on paper. It was a bridge across time, a whisper from a love that transcended physical presence. My mother, in her infinite wisdom, had prepared this message, knowing that one day, when I needed it most, the universe, or perhaps something even greater, would guide me to it. The dream, the one where I heard, "When you see the key in your hands, open," was no longer a cryptic riddle, but a divine instruction. The key wasn't a physical object, but the key to understanding, to unlocking a truth that had been waiting patiently for its moment to surface. The revelation contained within those delicate lines changed everything. It provided context, healed old wounds, and offered a clarity I hadn't realized I desperately sought. It wasn't a dramatic, Hollywood-esque twist, but a quiet, profound unfolding of human experience, a mother's foresight, a daughter's journey, and the subtle ways life speaks to us. I looked at the letter, then at the Bible, then around my living room, and the world seemed brighter, imbued with a new layer of meaning. The complex tapestry of life, with its hidden threads and unexpected patterns, began to make sense. It was a testament to the enduring power of love and the unseen forces that guide us, often without our immediate awareness. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a carefully orchestrated moment, a divine appointment. This experience solidified my belief that there are indeed forces at play beyond our immediate comprehension. We are often searching for grand signs, for thunderous pronouncements, when the answers lie in the subtle nudges, the repeated symbols, the quiet insights that pierce through the ordinary. The universe, in its boundless generosity, is constantly communicating, offering guidance, comfort, and revelation. It's up to us to learn to listen, to open our hearts and minds to the myriad ways these messages manifest, in dreams, in a found object, in a chance encounter, or in a letter patiently waiting beneath a sacred book. My life, once adrift in a sea of questions, now sails with a compass calibrated by truth and grace. And so, my friends, I share this story with you as a testament to the fact that God speaks in many forms, in many ways, sometimes even in silence, through the quiet coincidences and the profound whispers of our hearts. These are not just stories. They are invitations to look closer, to listen more intently, to trust the journey. If this story has resonated with you, if it has sparked a glimmer of hope or a question in your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives of faith, resilience, and the extraordinary ways divine messages shape our lives. The world is full of these unspoken narratives, these moments of profound connection and miraculous insight. My mother's letter, hidden for decades, was not just for me. It was a symbol, a beacon. It reminded me that even when we feel alone, we are profoundly connected to something larger than ourselves. Our paths are often guided by hands we cannot see, by love that transcends time and space. We are called to keep our eyes open, to recognize the keys in our hands, and to have the courage to open the doors they unlock. Every experience, every dream, every quiet moment of intuition holds a potential message, a revelation waiting to be discovered. May you too find your keys and open your own doors to understanding.